Today's Das Be'ez Hashem is Masechta Baba Basra Daf Chavav, and we will begin on Daf Chav Hey Amid Beis, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So, about like 5 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah said, we're going to put it over here, that Rabbi Yossi said, I put it in blue, that Afal Pi She Habor Kodemis Le'ilan, even though the Mishnah says a person who, if two neighbors living next to each other, and one has a pit, the other one should not have a tree growing at the border where this guy is digging his pit, because what's going to happen is the roots of the tree are going to destroy the pit. So the Mishnah says that even if the guy built his pit first and then the other guy planted a tree, it will not give a right for the owner of the pit to cut down the tree, even though the person who put the tree there should not have done it. But because Rabbi Yossi is very lenient on this matter, he says lo yikaitz, because it's not a direct damage. It takes time till a tree grows and actually spreads its roots to actually do some damage to the pit. So lo yikaitz, you should not cut down the tree. The owner of the pit should not walk into the guy's property and cut down his tree. He said, "What are you planting a tree? I just have a pit right at the edge of the property." This one is digging a pit in his property, and this one is planting a tree in his property, and they could be b'shalom. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So the reason why Rabbi Yossi is very lenient is because the tree is not going to directly damage the pit. Although you put the tree at the border where this guy of the property, where your neighbor is digging a pit, but it'll take time till the roots of your tree will actually do some damage to his pit. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rabbi Ashi says, Ki havana bei Rav Kahana. When I learned in the yeshiva of Kahana, Hava Aminan, he would say, Moide Rabbi Yossi begiri didei. Rabbi Yossi would agree that if, in case you're actually directly causing damage, and I'll give you an example of that, even Rabbi Yossi says, then you have no right to do that. If you're directly causing damage to somebody, as a neighbor, you have to take down the thing that's damaging somebody else. So the Gemara gives you a story. Papa Yanoah, that's this person called Papa Yanoah, Oni Veheshahava. He was a poor person and he became rich. Bona Apadna, he built a palace. Okay, Habahana Atsuri B'Shivute, the Habidaiki Shumshme Habinaide Apande. Right next to him, his neighbor had a place where you crush sesame seeds to make oil. And when they would operate the machine, his palace would start to sway and shake. So that's a direct damage. Also, the comment. So can the owner of the palace demand that you move your sesame oil making machine somewhere else? Also, the comment of Rav Ashi. So they came to Rav Ashi. Malay. So Rav Ashi said, "Ki avam be'rakana." When I was in the yeshiva of Kahana, Havamrin, they would say, "Moide Rabbi Yossi begir delay." Rabbi Yossi would agree that if you're directly causing damage, you have to remove the thing that's causing damage. I'm going to start using these pictures from the Pirish Chai. Here's the palace, and this is the operating. They were right next door. The neighbors were making sesame oil, and by using this apparatus over here, they would shake the building over here. And the Gemara is going to say what is called shaking a building. That if the shaking of a building would be if you would leave a jug of oil on top with a cover on it, and when you operate the machine, the cover would fall off, then that's called something that's too damaging his house, and therefore you have to remove it. That's what the Gemara is going to say. But how much does the swaying of the building have to require to sway in order for us to demand from the person crushing the sesame oil to move his machinery away from the borderline? And says the Gemara, we go to top of Chavav Ma'alef, that if you put a jug of oil on the wall with a cover of it, and it would sway so much when you operate the crushing of the sesame oil that the cover of the jug would fall off because of the vibration, then you know you're doing something wrong and you have to remove the sesame oil making machine somewhere else. The May Mar is so now let's see the picture for the next picture. So we'll do the pictures first, and then we'll do here's the picture. A guy was cutting flax, and the wind somehow was blowing the flax pieces into somebody else's property and causing damage. Mazik people who are walking behind the wall. And the Gemara is going to also speak about slamming a piece of metal on top of an anvil, and sparks will fly out. And here's a picture of that. So now let's read the Gemara. Bei Maryam Bei Brei de Ravan, the son of Maryam, who was the son of Ravan. Okay, have a nafsi kitana, when he would comb flax, have a also raksa umaskina inusha. The pieces that would fly off would do damage to people. Also, the coming to Ravina. So it came to Ravina Amalei. He said like this: Ki amrina moided Rav Yosef begiru delight. Rav Yosef would agree that you would have to remove that because it's directly causing damage to people. But it's only if you're directly causing the damage. Hacha over here, zukahu de kamamtele, is the wind that's really causing the damage. So therefore, we can request in this picture over here, we can request that this guy over here should just, stay away from the wall. You can't demand him to move his flax somewhere else because really he's not causing the damage. It's the wind blowing that's causing the damage. So says the Gemara, Maskeflaw. Mar Baravashi asked the question, why is it different than somebody who winnows in the Gemara says that winnowing is one of the Malamates malachas, when you throw the wheat up and the shaft blows off, and you see regarding to Hilchos Shabbos, that's considered as if you're doing it. Yechayev that you are over one of the Lamates malachas. So why don't we consider that just because the wind is helping you, that should be considered as if you're directly causing the damage? So the simple answer to this question is that Shabbos, the Torah was only concerned that you get the result of the work that you did. The mazik, in order to be held liable for damaging somebody, you actually have to do the damage, not the wind helping you. So Amrisa Kameder Ameimer, I said this idea to Marema, Amalu, Hainu Zareya, Baruch Masairai. Say Rabbi Marema disagreed. And he held by Nazikin, you say it's the same idea as Hilchos Shabbos, and that you are held liable. So according to Marema, the guy combing the flax should have to move his flax away from the people so it doesn't damage them. But Ravina disagreed. Ravina, the Gemara says, even by Nazikim, Ravina was concerned that even if it's not you that's doing it, it's the wind that's doing it, you still are liable to pay. For example, in the picture over here, when he's slamming his anvil onto a piece of metal and sparks is flying out, if the sparks flew somewhere else and started a fire, even then Ravina would agree that you're held liable. So why over here, basically, the question is, why over here you're held liable, and over here, with the flax, you don't consider him liable. It's not his direct doing, it's the wind that's doing it. So answers the Gemara, the difference is, Hasam Nichele de Lezel. Over there, by the sparks coming out of the anvil, he wants it to go somewhere else, so he doesn't start a fire in his own house. Hacha over here, like Nichele de Lezel, he doesn't want the pieces of flax hairs to go somewhere else. He doesn't mind if it lands here. It's the wind that's doing the entire job over here. And therefore it's against his will that it's flying into somebody's face across the wall. And therefore he's not held liable. Next Mishnah. Mishnah says, let's look at the picture. Here's the Mishnah. Mishnah says a person's not supposed to put your tree so close to somebody else's field. You have to leave a space of 4 amas. Why do you have to leave a space of 4 amas in your neighbor's field? Because if you put the tree closer to here, then you're going to have to use, when you want to plow around the tree to soften the earth, you're going to encroach on your neighbor's property. So therefore, you have to have a distance from a tree. If you're planting a tree, there should be a distance of 4 amos to your neighbor's property. That's what the Mishnah says. But if there was a wall in between your neighbor's property, then you can put the tree up to the wall because you're never going to get there. You're never going to you never encroach on your neighbor's property because of the wall there. Now, but then there's Mishnah says, let's say your neighbor has a tree. And the Mishnah is going to say the neighbor has a tree, and the roots of the tree go into the other neighbor's field. So Reuven has a tree, and its roots go into Shimon's field. The Mishnah is going to say that Reuven is allowed to cut some of the roots up to 3 tvachim that's encroaching into his field. Up to 3 tvachim in the ground, he can cut away on the branches, as you can see in the picture. He cut away some of the branches, but below 3 tvachim, he has to leave it there. And now, but if Mishnah is to say, but if Reuven plans to build a pit, let's say to catch water, so then he can cut off all the branches down as much as he needs and the depth of the pit, so that he can have a clear pit. So he can cut off all the branches, all the roots that are coming into his property. Okay, so Reuven's tree has branches coming into Shimon's property. There's a lot of cut off all the branches. Let's read the Mishnah. A person should not plant a tree next to the field of your friend until you have a distance of 4 amos away from your neighbor's field, so that you don't encroach his field when you want to plow around the tree. It doesn't matter if you're planting any tree or even a grapevine. But if there's a wall in between, each one could plant right up until the wall. If roots of one party goes into the field of his friend, he's allowed to cut away the roots of those roots, so that it doesn't damage his plow. Because if he has his friend's roots in his field and he's using a plow, it'll break the plow machine. That if he was digging a well into his backyard or some other type of pit, so then he's allowed to cut away as long as all the branches that are encroaching into his pit. Well, eitzim shloi, and the tree and the wood from that branch, from that roots, belong to him. The question is, who does it belong to? Does it belong to this guy, Shimon, or it's not his tree, or does he have to give it back to Reuven? So this, we'll discuss that in the Gemara. Tanu, we learned in the Brisa, Arba Amos Amru Kedei Avodas Kerem. The 4 Amos that we have here is the work of a kerem. That's the amount of that you plow around a tree or even a grapevine. Shmuel said, only in Eretz Yisrael where they had wide. You have to leave 4 amos because they had wide plowshares. In Bavel, all you need to distance the tree from your neighbor's property is 2 amos because they had smaller plowshares. Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned in another brisa that agrees with that. Person should not plant a tree next to his friend's field unless you made a distance of 2 amos away from your neighbor's field. Hey, but in our mission says Arba amos, that a tree should be distanced from your friend's field 4 amos. That's like the proof, like what Shmuel said, that in Bavel, the shear is 2 amos. Our mission is talking about in Israel. In Israel, where the machinery was bigger, then you have to have a distance of 4 amos between your friend's field and yourself. Others ask it as a contradiction, but it's the same idea, same conclusion. Now we look in Mishnah. A person should not plant a field only next to his friend's field. Like a Mishnah said, you have to give yourself a distance of 4 amos, and then you can plant your tree. But we learned to the Brisa amos that 2 amos is sufficient. It's not a difficulty. In Bavel, 2 amos is sufficient because the plowshares are smaller. Israel, but Amish is talking about in Israel, where the plowshares are bigger, so therefore you're going to need much more space. As you can see here in the picture, you need 4 amos because these machineries were bigger, and you're going to encroach on your friend's field if you don't have a distance of 4 amos. The Gemara continues. Rava bar Rav Chanan havalei hana dikle ametzu tepadesid Rav Yosef. Rabbi Baruch Hanan had this trees on the border of the garden of Rav Yosef. So we can take a look at the picture over here. Here's Rabbi Baruch Hanan's trees on the border of Rav Yosef's vineyard, and I guess there were birds coming from the trees of Rabbi Baruch Hanan and eating up the grapes that are on the vineyards, the vines, the grapevine belonging to Rav Yosef. Okay, so now the Gemara continues. So the Gemara says, so let's start again. Rav Baruch Hanan Habalehani Dikli Ametsu Depardesu Rav Yosef. He had these trees, palm trees on the border to the garden of Rav Yosef. Have also tipari yasu v'dikli. There was birds that would rest on the palm trees. V'nechasi ben mepardesi. They would land on the orchard umafsa delay and destroy it. Amalei. So Rav Yosef said to Rav Baruch Hanan, Zilkites, cut it down. Amalei. So he said to him, Varachitili. But I distance 4 amas from your border. So why should I have to cut down my trees? How many if on the other side of the border were other trees, then you're right. Then all you have to keep is 4 amas. But if the other side has grapes, you need to distance your trees much further away from my vineyard. Says the Gemara of Anan Tanan, but didn't our Mishnah say Echad Gefanim ve'Echad Kol Ilan? Any tree, whether you have Gefanim or trees, the distance is one unified distance of 4 amas. Amalei, how many Ilan in it? If you're going from one tree to the other tree of Gefanim, then it's 4 amas. Aval Ilan Gefanim be'Ilan Tfei. In this case over here, he had trees. Rabbi Baruch Hanan had trees. Rav Yosef had a grapevine over here. So we're going to force Rabbi Baruch Hanan to chop his trees down because of the birds are doing damage to the grapevines belonging to Rav Yosef. Now the Gemara tells you another story. And here's the pictures for the next story. Rav Papa has these trees, and they're 16 amas away. The roots are 16 amas away from Rav Huna B'Rav Rav Yeshua's property. Okay, the roots are entering 16 amas into Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua's property, and Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua is digging a pit. Let's see what it says over here. Rav Papa Habalahani Dikla. He had these palm trees. Ametrid Rav Huna B'Rav Rav Yeshua on the border of Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua. So Rav Papa's palm trees were encroaching on the property of Rav Huna B'Rav Rav Yeshua via the roots. Also, Ashkechei the Havachafa, the Koich Shirasa. So Rav Papa saw that Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua was digging a pit and cutting off his branches, the roots of his trees. Amalei, my hi, why are you cutting the roots of my trees? Amalei, Tanami learned in the Mishnah. Your roots are coming into your friend's property. You're allowed to go deep and cut at least 3 tefachim of those roots so that it doesn't destroy the plowshares. So I'm cutting off the roots of your trees. Okay, that only gives you right to cut the first 3 tefachim of roots, the top 3 tefachim of roots that are in your land. But you're going very deep, and as you can see in the picture, he was going very deep and cutting off all the roots. So Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua said, he says, I'm digging a pit. You can go as deep as you want and cut off all the branches. So therefore, I'm cutting off much more because I'm planning to dig a pit. Amar Papa said, Amri le kuli v'le yachlili. He said all his excuses, and I couldn't stop him from cutting the roots of the trees. And now we go to Mebez. The Amrile, I told him, the Amar Rav Yehuda, what Rav Yehuda said, once a border that the Rabbim was using, so then the Rishus Rabbim was using, let's say a pathway, it belongs to Rishus Harabim. They have a chazak in it. In other words, they once something, let's say, was a shortcut for the Rishus Harabim, even though technically on the deed it said it belonged to somebody's property, but if the Rishus Harabim was using it for many years and you didn't protest, it becomes the Rishus Harabim. So same thing over here. He had his trees here. Rav Papa had his trees here for many years. So just because now one day Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua decides to build a pit, it's already Rav Papa felt that he had a chazaka. In other words, he had an acquired and assumed usage of the property of Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua for the roots of his tree, and Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua had no right to cut the roots of his tree. Labasa denafik, but after Rav Papa left, Amalei, Amar, Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua said, they told Rabbi Yehuda ben Yeshua, you could have sent to something else. That Rav Huna said, why didn't you say to him that in the 16 amas of the tree, you're right, that belongs to the tree, but you're outside the 16 amas, so therefore the chazaka is not a chazaka, because we know that a tree will only, the main nourishment of the tree is in the first 16 amas. In other words, you're right. Rav Papa had assumptive rights in Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua's property for the roots of his trees. Okay, but he only has the assumption rights of the first 16 amas, because these are the most important roots of the tree. But beyond 16 amas, which is where Rav Yehuda ben Yeshua was actually digging his pit, there Rav Papa does not have assumption rights, and therefore Rav Huna ben Yeshua had a right to cut the roots off, because these are not important roots. The roots underneath these first 16 amas are most important, and so Rav Huna ben Yeshua cannot build a pit over here. He could only build one over here, and which he was doing that, and therefore that gave him the right to cut off the roots of the tree belonging to Rav Papa. Then the Mishnah says, who does he have to give the roots back? If he's cutting off roots, who does he give it back? Can he keep it, or does he have to give it back to the owner of the tree? So the Gemara wants to bring one proof. So they answered. Rav Chizda answered, Rav Yaakov Hadaiva. I've never heard. Yaakov Hadaiva asked Rav Chizda, who does the wood belong to? And Rav Chizda responded, Tanisa, we have a Mishnah. Sharshi Ilin shel Hedyed Haboim shel Hegdish lo Nehenim v'lo Me'alim. If you have the roots of a tree of Hedyed belonging to a plain person that end up into the Hegdish, right? Lo Nehenim v'lo Me'alim. You're not allowed to benefit from those roots. And if you do, it doesn't belong. You're not chayiv a korban meila, because it really doesn't belong to hegdish. So really, it goes where the tree is. If you say that you go where the tree is, so therefore those roots really belong to the tree, which are not hegdish. That's why you didn't do an avera if you benefit from it. But if you say that the roots belong where the land is, why wouldn't you get Mila? It's in the Hegdish land. And here's, you can see the picture. Picture is Hedyet, and goes into Hegdish's property. These roots, if someone would benefit, you didn't do an Avera. You didn't get the Me'ilah, because it really belongs to the Hedyet. So we see that you always go, the roots really belong back to the owner of the tree. So that's the proof that Rav Chizda brought. So the Gemara says, wait a second, aim a sefer. Let's look at the end of the brisa. Elamai basa ilinaza. You're saying you go after the tree. Aim a sefer. Let's see the end of the Mishnah or the brisa. Shel hegdish haboyim b'shel hedyet loy nehenu v'loy ma'alin. Vi basa ezlinin amay loy ma'alin. In the reverse situation, where the Hegdish owns the tree and it ends up in Hedyet's property, there's also no Me'ilah. But if you go after where the tree is, like as you can see in the picture over here, then you should be chayiv Me'ilah. So if you say the roots belong to the tree, then you should be chayiv Me'ilah. So Ella Midi Arya. So we got the whole story wrong. This is talking about begidulin haboim la'achem ikanaskinim v'kosova emil begidulim. This is talking about something totally different that has nothing to do with what we're discussing over here. It's not, you don't go after the tree or the karka. It's nothing to do with it. We're talking about this person made a tree hegdish, And what happens if the roots start to grow after you made the tree hegdish? And there's an opinion, Masechta Me'ila, that if something grows after you made it hegdish, the part that grows doesn't have halachas of hegdish on it. Even the roots of hegdish in the field of hegdish, you wouldn't get you wouldn't be chayav Me'ila over here. So it's a totally different topic over there. So it's not a raya. So Rav Chizda did not bring a proof to answer Rabbi Yaakov Hadavi's question. Ravina says is also, I could also answer that brisa is loy kashi is not a difficult. The brisa that says that you go after the tree, it's talking about the roots that are within the first 16 amas of the tree. As you say, the first 16 amas really of the roots really belong to the tree. At the end of the brisa that says it belongs to hegdish that goes into hedyet, that you don't get mila, it's talking about roots that are beyond 16 amas. So Ravina says you do see from the brisa that roots that are very close to the tree belong to the owner of the tree. So if the guy has a right to cut them, he has to return the wood back to the owner of the tree. So we're going to leave the rest of the Gemara for tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem.